the first thing you want to do always with the new blade, or a blade that you've been using for a while, is to flatten the back and remove any scratches or any marks. Your plane will be able to take shavings like mine only if you have a cutting surface in the back here. I'd say there's about 1/4 of an inch where it's like a mirror. That's what you want. No scratches at all. Those scratches translate into little grooves in your surface. And you'll see them in the shavings. Sometimes there's holes in it, and it's because you've got little marks back here, or your blade is a little dinged at the edge. So you want to make sure first thing that you get this nice and flat. And like I said, you don't need to flatten the entire back, just up here where your cutting thing lays on the frog. And that's about good. It's nice, and as you can see, it's nice and shiny. There's no scratches and whatnot. Once you've got the back of this flat, next you want to create this main bevel here. Now to do that, it's best to use a hand grinder. This is something that I picked up in an antique place. It has metal bearings, it has a little oil well, and so on. The newer ones have plastic bearings and whatnot. They're not as good. If you can find one of these are really great for this. The reason is the hand crank, your maximum speed's going to be pretty slow, and that's what you want. The more speed you get, the hotter you make the blade. You can actually detemper the steel, and you don't want to do that. You want to cut it very slow, and you want to cut it very cool. And if it starts getting real hot, dip it in a glass of water or something. So now this comes with a bevel. This has been done a little bit so we can speed this along. But what you want to do, this is sort of like rubbing your belly and tapping your head. You're doing two different things with your hands, but you need to get used to it. You're going to grind like this. And you just want to move it back and forth on here. And then every once in a while, you want to check it with your square, because you want to keep this as square as possible. You don't have to be real anal about it. You just need to get it close to square, because you can skew the blade to make it square once it's in there. But you want to have a nice place to start from. Now this seems like this end needs a little more removed. So we'll concentrate on this end a little bit. Now what you're trying to do on here is to bring this bevel to a point. When that happens, you'll see sparks shooting over the back of the blade. And as you move it back and forth, you need to see sparks everywhere. And the other thing is, if you sight down here, actually looking at the edge, if it's dull, you'll see light reflected back. If it's nice and sharp, you won't see anything at all. So we'll just do a little bit more. And this is on a rubber mat, that's why it's moving back and forth. Now you want to check Foursquare, and that is really good. Now to do the micro bevel, you don't need to go all the way back to the coarsest stone. This is, say, a middle grade stone. I think it's a 1200 grit blue stone, which is actually the only natural stone here. This, I think, is 6000, which is what we're going to use after this. But that's about as much as you're going to do, because this is a very, very thin edge here. You do not have to, first time, you do not have to really do much to get a real nice micro bevel. So we're going to put some water on here. And the most important thing in doing this is you want to keep the same angle as you're doing it. And from one to the next, you want the angle to be the same. You don't want to rock this like this. So whatever way is most comfortable for you, either go in circles or go back and forth, or a combination of the two. But you just want to put a nice micro edge on here. And like I said, it's not going to take very long, because that is a very, very thin edge. Okay? And we'll move to this stone now. maintain the same angle. And after a while, you know, some people use jigs and whatnot. It's really not necessary. You've done this a few times, you pretty much can get the angle right. You just want to okay. Now, I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's a very, very small, shiny edge right at the end of this. Now, we'll put this back in the plane and give it a test. Okay. You only want the cap in there tight enough so that when you push this over, it snugs it down. And as you can see, there you go. And once you get the blade in, you need to get it so that it's just barely sticking out of the opening. And then you need to adjust your throat. Now the throat, which is this little piece that moves back and forth, the smaller you can make this opening at the throat, the more fine you can get your plane to cut. And that's the whole idea. In order to get your blade square, you can sight that edge of the throat. You want the opening to be equal all the way along the length of the blade. And if it's not, you can just push these two little things back and forth, which then adjusts the blade from side to side. So we still have a little ways to go. But it's taking ever so fine a shaving off of there right now. Now, and this is how you want to come to it, a little at a time. You don't want to be hogging off wood. Now look at that. So this is a really sharp tool. A dull tool will not be able to take a shaving like this. So now let's just take it out a little bit more and look at the size of the opening in there. It is very, very tiny. In fact, it's probably too small right up there in the middle. So we'll back it off just a slight bit. Because if it's too small, it'll choke the shavings from coming out and the plane won't work properly. So you want the opening to be big enough to let the shavings through, but small enough to allow for fine shavings. And there you go. That's out of the middle of the blade, which means we've done it right. That's beautiful. That is absolutely fine. That's about 1/1000th of an inch thick. And that's exactly what we're shooting for.